everyone, and welcome to Alopecia's Audacity podcast, proudly hosted by the Canadian Alopecia Areata Foundation. I'm Sarah Teskey.
I'm Crystal Malcolm.
And I'm Lauren Harrison. We're here to offer you a breath of fresh air from those without hair.
Now listen, alopecia isn't easy, but we're going to challenge its audacity through our candid conversations, letting hair loss know that it cannot stop us from living our best life. We're here to empower, educate, and inspire you so that you leave us feeling confident knowing that you can be bald, bold, and free, not only on your own, but when you're surrounded by others.
On behalf of Canadians who have been diagnosed with alopecia areata, CANAF promotes awareness, education, raises funds for research, and so much more for those affected by this autoimmune disease.
You can find CANAF on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn at CANAF. That is CANAAF, and learn more about our organization at canaf.org. On our homepage, you can subscribe to receive our monthly emails, and we'll send you updates on our latest episodes as well as other alopecia news and event updates. Hello, and welcome back to Alopecia's Audacity. Today on the podcast, we're exploring one of our greatest powers, which is self-love, and how we can use it to motivate ourselves through the fears that come with having alopecia. We can't control our circumstances, but we can control how we treat ourselves and find strength in our journey, whatever it may entail. So, ladies, let's get into our conversation today. I'm super excited. So, to start us off, I have a question for you all. There's some research out there that shows that 70 to 80% of our daily thoughts are negative. And when you lose all your hair, at least for me, these negative thoughts seem to amplify even more. So how have you both turned these thoughts around and developed a self-loving mindset?
Wow, that's a pretty loaded question.
I know, a good one to start, right?
Right? You're making me think. Well, I think this whole thing about the self-loving mindset, it's definitely really tricky, especially when it comes to hair loss, because as we all know, we don't have control. And I think that's one of the main things for me is I always need to be in control. I'm a little busybody. I need to know what's going on with my life, my body, my mind, everything. But what I've learned in my hair loss journey is I've had to learn how to make myself a priority and not an option. That was one of the biggest things, was creating this narrative where even though I don't have control, I'm still the star of the show. I'm still Crystal. I still matter. I know I look different. I know that I can't control my circumstances in terms of what's going on with my body, but I can do little things to honor myself in spite of. So things that I would do would be like take myself on a date. And I know that's going to be a little bit scary for some people, but it is so therapeutic and empowering to be able to just take yourself on a date. And what I mean by that is it could be something as simple as going for a walk on a path. It could be going for a walk on a beach, taking yourself to the movies, whatever that is, buying yourself a cup of coffee and a butter tart, because I'm obsessed with butter tarts. I think just being in the moment by yourself. And I know some of our listeners may not feel comfortable going out in public bald or with thinning hair, and that's totally fine. I'm not saying that you have to do that. You can definitely wear a wig, wear a hat, whatever makes you comfortable. But the point is you're outside and you're not isolating yourself and locking yourself up in your room, that sort of thing. You're still enjoying the sunshine, getting some vitamin D. Another thing that I do is I buy myself flowers. I'm a plant mom by nature. But I think buying myself flowers is so important because it's also very reflective. Because when you look at flowers, they're so beautiful, but they're also different. They're different colors, they're different textures, all of that stuff. So to me, when I see flowers, I see myself. Like there's so many layers to me. Do you know what I mean? And flowers just look beautiful and they're so refreshing and they're just so, I don't know, they're just pretty. And I feel like I'm pretty and it just makes me feel happy. And other things that I did to help cultivate this self-loving mindset was that I would give myself time and space to grieve and to sit in whatever feeling I was in. So even though I'm taking myself on a date, even though I'm buying myself flowers, if I'm having a day or a moment where I'm feeling happy and sad at the same time, or I'm just feeling angry, I don't try to dismiss it by changing the subject or making myself busy. I actually acknowledge it for what it is. where I'm at and I work through that. And sometimes that means I just have to sit by myself. Sometimes it means I have to journal. Sometimes it means I just need a moment to pause and to figure out, why am I feeling this way? Did something trigger me? So I think it's important to give yourself space and time to grieve wherever you're at. Another thing that I did, because sometimes I'm hit and miss with this, I would make my bed. There's something about making your bed, even when you don't feel like it, it's the start to the day. And if you haven't accomplished anything all day, when you get home from work or school or whatever it is, at least if you walk into your space, which is your bedroom is supposed to be a safe haven. And at least when you walk in, if all else fails throughout the whole day, you can walk in there and know that you made your bed, then that's an accomplishment. And that's something that I started doing. And actually, a dear friend of mine said that to me. She's like, make your bed. Because if everything else in the day goes haywire, the one accomplishment you have is that you made your bed. I think that's very important. And something that I hated doing before, that I had to force myself to do, was look in the mirror and practice smiling and speaking. I would I'd stick my tongue out at myself. I would do all kind of crazy stuff, but I felt like that was kind of a way for me to just embrace the new me, because I'm with myself 24/7. So even though I look different, something's got to give. So I have to face myself, right? If I can't look at myself in the mirror, how am I going to look at other people in the eye?
Right.
So
Yeah.
So I think practice makes perfect. And recognizing that you're imperfectly perfect, and that's okay. So those are the kinds of things that I did to kind of help cultivate a self-loving mindset.
Wow. You should write a book right now. Like, the amount of things that you just said. Wow.
You're knocking it out of the park.
I love that one, just making your bed, because I feel the same way. Like, if my bed isn't made, it just makes me feel a little more stressed inside, It's just something easy that you can do just to come home to a space where you feel like you have your stuff together, I guess, in a way.
Yeah. And don't you find when you don't make your bed, when you walk in the room, you just feel anxious? Like, you feel like everything's chaotic because I've got laundry on my bed. I've got my pillows everywhere. My comforter's disarray. Like, I just feel like if I've had a chaotic day at work or school or whatever, and then I come into my room and then the bed's chaotic, that just is a trigger for me. It just doesn't make it better,
For sure.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I would say what's really helped me is accepting that this is normal behavior for our human brains. And even if we might feel a little bit alone in our kind of inner narrative, a lot of other people are facing these critical thoughts too, and this voice that tends to be on the negative end. So once I've accepted that, it's comforting to realize, oh, this is the human experience. Like, we're all kind of in it together. And then from that point, I treat it like a little bit of a dusting inside my head. Like, I'm trying to clear the cobwebs from my brain. And then it's just a daily practice and a daily challenge that I'm going to come from a place of self-respect in order to change these thoughts and turn them into a more positive narrative, rather than a place of striving to be dramatically different. But there's still so much work to do.
For sure. I think for all of us there is, but I love what you said about clearing the cobwebs. I think that's such a great analogy, because it really is. It's not always like clear cut too. Like, for me, sometimes I have like these negative feelings inside, but I don't know what kind of thought is producing it. I just know I have this awful feeling inside. And so I have to force myself to slow my thoughts down and really listen closely to figure out what I'm thinking to cause that negative feeling. So I think it always is a learning process where you're trying to just kind of understand what's going on inside your mind, and then, challenge it, right? Challenge it, clear the cobwebs, and find something that's a little more loving to say to yourself.
No, absolutely. And I think that's just another nature of alopecia, is that it makes us uncomfortable. And the fact that this is such a daily challenge, and the fact that every day we have to practice these forms of self-love, because like you said, we never know where these feelings of negativity are going to come from, right? And so I think it's important that we understand that alopecia forces us to be uncomfortable, and it forces you to have to sit with your feelings, because there's so many things happening in our mind and our body at once. So I was going to ask you guys, what are your coping strategies that you guys use to kind of work through the discomfort of it?
Very good question. For me, I love a good meditation or yoga session. That's what I do when my mind feels very overwhelmed. It really helps me refocus my energy and calm the storm that's happening inside of me. And meditation also helps me to notice what thoughts are going on in my brain and to practice listening without judgment, without shaming myself. And a big part of accepting alopecia is finding your power and being able to go through all of your emotions without judging or shaming yourself for how you feel. So meditation has really helped me come a long way with that. And then for yoga, it's such a gentle and invigorating form of movement that helps you shuffle the energy around inside your body when it's feeling stuck or stagnant. So sometimes a little breathing exercise, a little yoga is the best medicine for resetting your mind so you can find a way to be present and calm. And then, so those are the things I love to do. I also love walking. I love journaling, really anything that helps me stay present and mindful while working through my thoughts.
I love that. Do you practice yoga and meditation at a studio, or is it something you do at home? Because I know some people may be so insecure when it comes to their alopecia, so they may not want to go to a studio or, to a workshop or something like that. So is there like YouTube videos that you watch, or do you do it just in the privacy of your own home? Like where do you practice?
Yeah, so I mostly practice at home unless if we're going to puppy yoga, because that's a must. We have to go out for that one. But yeah, I prefer being in the comfort of my own home when doing yoga. So I go on YouTube and I do yoga with Adrienne. She's a YouTuber. She has tons of fantastic videos. Some of them are focused on different areas of the body, like if your back or shoulders are feeling sore, anything like that. Or she also has videos focused on different mindsets. So if you're feeling stressed or scared or anxious, anything like that, her practices can help you target what you're feeling and work through those. So I find her practices really great. I will go out and do yoga like in classes as well, but I kind of just love that yoga is something that you can really do anywhere. So I can be at home and do yoga and I don't need too much space to do it, just a yoga mat and maybe a video. When you're breathing or meditating, you just find a chair and you're good. You can do it anywhere. So that's really what I love about it. It's very versatile. And wherever I am, even if I'm in the office, I can kind of find a quiet moment just to recollect my thoughts if I need to. Yeah.
That's amazing, Sarah.
Yeah. How about you, Lauren? What do you do?
Well, it sounds a little bit like a broken record because I definitely am on the yoga and meditation wavelength right there with you. Just because of what you've said, I've found it to be such an interesting practice. No one yoga practice day to day is the same. Even if you were to put on the same video or going to a studio and doing the same style of yoga, whether it's vinyasa or yin, the way that you show up to your practice is always a little bit different. So that's a great exercise for me in terms of being present and getting to know sort of how I'm sitting with the discomfort. And I would agree with you too that meditation has that similar benefit where you get to pay attention to the thoughts that are going on. And in that, I find I really have to look at the way that I'm speaking to myself. And as we mentioned earlier, it kind of gives you a chance to audit your thoughts and sit with the discomfort. So to me, yoga and meditation have really been helpful in terms of getting to know the discomfort a little bit better that comes with alopecia and comes with such a self-awareness that we sort of develop. And the other thing that I am working on is kind of a daily practice of self-compassion and learning a little bit more about what that means, because I think compassion for others is so, so important, but I didn't necessarily realize what self-compassion, turning it inwards, really looked like until I did some reading and I started to do the work and I noticed, this doesn't always feel as sunshiny and positive as I thought it would feel. It comes from a place of love for sure, but it also comes from a place of radical acceptance and being honest with yourself. And then facing those feelings, that it's a chance to meet yourself exactly where you are. And as I said, it just doesn't always feel as warm and bright as, what it's made out to be. Self-care isn't always bubble baths and that kind of sentiment. It's really about meeting yourself where you are and putting in the daily reps of self-acceptance as if you were training to build a muscle. You're kind of strengthening that muscle of this is who I am and this is how I accept myself, all the parts kind of thing.
Well said. I love that. I love that.
Yes.
Building muscle. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So I guess speaking of discomfort, it's made me think, based on what we're talking about, a lot of us have fears in dealing with our alopecia, and we might fear going out in public, going swimming, traveling, dating, even finding love. there are a lot of levels to it. So I'd like to know how you have overcome your fear kind of in these domains.
Well, that's a loaded question.
Another hard-hitting cue.
Oh my gosh. Fear and alopecia definitely go hand in hand. This is something that's taken a very, very, very long time for me to work through. And I guess some of the things I could think of would be like asking myself what's the worst thing that could happen versus the best thing that could happen. So for example, if I'm wearing a wig, and I'm not trying to scare any of our listeners, but okay, the worst thing that could happen is my wig could fall off. The best thing that could happen is that my wig looks fabulous and I get compliments about my hair. Do you know what I mean? And I think, and even like the worst thing that could happen about, for example, me going out bald is people making inappropriate comments. But the good thing about me going outside bald is people could still make inappropriate comments. But I'm outside being fabulous and being unapologetically bare. So what difference does it make? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, I think it's all about perspective, and no one can make you do anything because I feel like your heart and your mind aren't in sync. Like if they're not in sync, you're going to be stuck. And I know that the two can conflict with each other because, as we all know, the mind does what the heart feels. But I think for me, I just had to make up my mind and just do it. And it's also starting small. And it could be something like me just going to get my mail without a wig, or, maybe me, I don't know, going to the mall to buy a new pair of pants or something. Like whatever it is, whatever that small is for you, grabbing a cup of coffee, it's just about starting where you're most comfortable. And I think I'll even use the analogy of swimming. So I've always had a fear of water. Actually, I've been petrified of water. And one of the reasons why is because I always felt like I couldn't conquer it. And so what I decided to do was I did it afraid anyways. And I went and I registered for lessons, never told anybody. And my first swimming lesson, my mom came with me, and there's, toddlers there. There's kids, I don't know, maybe in their teens. Did I see any adults? No, maybe just the instructors, but there were kids that were maybe like 5 and under. And then there's me, 45-year-old me getting in this water. And I will say the first time I went in, I was so scared because she was like, okay, the first thing we're going to teach you to do is like put your head underwater. And I was like, who are you talking to? I'm scared of water and you want me to put my head underwater? Are you crazy? But you know what? I did it anyway. And the best thing that happened is I was like, oh my gosh, I could see underwater. This is so cool. And I actually began to loosen up. And as I loosened up, every swimming class got easier and more fun. And I started to change the narrative. Like I actually looked forward to going to swim class, and to the point now where one of my exercises that I do a couple times a week is aquafit, where you're actually doing aerobics in the water with weights, and it's amazing. And just the other day, actually, I left my swimming cap in my gym bag and I didn't even realize it. And I went to the pool bald, and I completely forgot until I got in the water and I saw somebody else with a swim cap, and I'm like touching my head. I'm like, oh my gosh, I left my swim cap, but nothing bad happened. I had a fantastic class. So it's really about changing the narrative and being the author of your own story. And I feel like it's also important for us to remember that we matter and we're on this planet for a reason, and the world needs us. And we just need to live our lives and do it anyways, because people are always going to opinion. The world is always going to world. Life is going to always life. And I've realized I can't live my life in fear of what other people may think or say, because I have no control of that. So I'm going to wake up in the morning, I'm going to make my bed, and I'm going to do it afraid anyways. So yeah. So that's kind of how I've kind of overcome my fears.
Wow. You said it, girl.
Yes.
You said it all. Oh, I love that. You got to do it afraid. You got to just put one foot in front of the other. And I like how you said you just take things in small steps too, because that's kind of what I do. When things are very scary, I focus on putting one foot in front of the other. And like by only focusing on the next 5 minutes and not, the entire task or the entire experience in front of me really helps me to take my overwhelming fear and break it down into something more manageable, smaller pieces. It's kind of like food. If we tried to swallow an apple whole, we would choke. But in slices, we can eat it and, kind of find a way to enjoy it. So I've also learned that to accept fear, you can't fight it. You have to accept it. I know how fear works enough to know that's not going to go away until the thing that's causing it is over. So I let myself feel the fear and not feel ashamed of it. And I accept that it's going to be along with me for the ride. And now I have a choice to be courageous. For all those Game of Thrones fans out there, I don't know if there's any listening right now, but there's a quote that I think of often when I'm facing fear. And it's when Bran asks his dad, Ned, can a man still be brave if he's afraid? And Ned says, that is the only time a man can be brave. And so if swimming is something you really want to do, you'll have to do it through the fear to conquer it. And eventually swimming will become less scary over time and you'll start enjoying it more. Just like Crystal is saying, you have to do it through the fear. And another thing that I do is I practice gratitude. So every morning I say out loud people and things that I'm grateful to have in my life. And that helps me start my day off with a positive mindset. So I end up looking forward to the day much more with those things in mind. And I'm able to find much more beauty in the small things. And oddly enough, I think that having alopecia helped me to develop a grateful mindset. I mean, if we were all granted everything in life that we dreamed of and desired, why would we need to be grateful? There wouldn't be a point in being grateful. It's only in absence that we're able to feel gratitude. So I think in a strange way, alopecia has helped me develop that mindset. I think it's kind of why I have the ability to be grateful. So yeah, those are a few things that I do.
Sarah for president.
Agreed. Honestly, that's amazing.
I love that. Wow. I was trying to take notes as you were talking. And I love that you said just take things step by step. And I love the thing about just focus on within the moment, within that 5 minutes. Don't think about the whole day. Cause I think I'm a planner and sometimes I can get carried away. And I love the fact that it's focusing on that moment in that moment because we don't know what's going to happen 5 minutes from now. So let's just focus on the 5 minutes,
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
Can I get an amen?
Yeah, I guess that's the beauty of self-compassion, right? Sarah, you're talking about coexisting with the fear and letting it be there, leaning into it, and then also calling on some self-love and I think some positive emotions along with the fear, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I even feel that too when I'm in public sometimes and someone has an opinion about my alopecia, or they approach me about it. There's always that spike of anxiety at first, but then I'm able to work through that with self-love. I really tap into it and I just tell them exactly how I feel because I know with love on my side, I know that no matter what that person may say, I can handle it. I've got my back. And this doesn't mean my anxiety in that moment just magically vanishes. No, instead, I entreat myself with compassion by validating my anxiety and setting boundaries with the person in front of me. And so, in a situation where you have someone approach you about your alopecia, I think it's most important to be honest with them, whether you're in a place where you're comfortable with your appearance or not. For me, I'm comfortable being a bald woman. So I have this statement prepared ahead of time. I say, I appreciate your concern, but I'm happy with the way I look. Or I might say, I appreciate your concern, but saying that is not helpful to me. Here's what you can say to be supportive. So self-love really is the secret ingredient here because without it, you won't be able to be understanding with yourself and be firm and set boundaries with the other person. It'll only make your anxiety feel worse. Do you guys feel that too when someone approaches you in public about your alopecia? How do you deal with those comments? Do you have to tap into self-love too, or?
I think for me, I'm just direct. I think I've done enough work and healing within myself that I'm so over people's opinions. I've tapped out. If somebody says something to me, it just depends on my mood too. Because you can catch me on a good day and you can catch me on a bad day. So I try to be respectful and I try to read the room. If somebody's being rude about it, you may get a little testy crystal back. If somebody's genuinely just curious or has a question or assumes maybe I've gone through treatment or whatever it is, then I'll respond with more of an understanding, compassionate type of way. I used to have elevator pitches in my head, but I feel like sometimes in the moment, all those elevator pitches go out the window because I never remember them. So for me, the direct approach is the best approach that I've found. And I don't take anything personal. Sometimes I just feel like people are just naturally ignorant and they can't help it. Some people just don't care. But I think I'm at a place in my journey where I love myself so much. And like you, Sarah, I love being bald. I wouldn't change this for anything in the world. So there isn't anything that anybody can say to make me feel less than about myself. And like you said, even if you're not feeling the greatest that day, they don't need to know that. You know what I mean? It's all about projection and how you're presenting yourself. And it's a great way for you to assert and take back your power, especially for those who feel like alopecia has stolen from them. This is a way for you to regain that power, is by walking with your head held high, look that person in the eye and say what you got to say, because nobody's going to spare your feelings. You know what I'm saying?
100%. I totally agree. Direct is the way. You just got to say what you mean, be honest, set those boundaries. And that's the best way through it. And like you said, we have enough love for ourselves that we won't feel less than no matter what someone else says to us, right? Because we understand ourselves. We love ourselves for who we are.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, you said it, Crystal. It's a little bit of a tough pill to swallow, but nobody is going to spare our feelings. So that's where that ingredient that Sarah mentioned, self-love, that's where that comes in. And I think you just have to sprinkle it everywhere. Slap it on as much as you can.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes I've actually been asked before, what if I'm afraid that I won't mean the things that I say to myself? What if I'm afraid I don't believe that I love myself? And that question made me so sad when I heard that. But I think what the really important part is that you don't give yourself any other option but to mean the words that you say to yourself. So if you say to yourself something loving, you mean it. You don't give yourself an option. Loving yourself takes determination. It doesn't just happen. Self-love is a choice. And you live with yourself through all these pains and fears and joy and all the rest. And you must choose to love yourself through it all. You love yourself as hard as you can, because if you don't, you'll be lost. How will you live your life in that way, right? I think it's just loving yourself fiercely and with determination is so important. And just making sure other people sense that energy from you.
Sarah, that's amazing. It's unconditional love that you've put into practice. And as you said, it's just absolutely fierce, which leads me to a question. Even if you feel fierce and determined in your self-love, I think that there are still so many questions. And oftentimes we feel like we're forced to explain ourselves, and it kind of leads to a feeling of explanation fatigue, or just, the daunting pressure of over-explaining ourselves. So when you have comments from others, or, potential comments from others, how do you cope with these?
I think sometimes even like in that over-explanation thing, there's always that question of, well, why don't you just wear a wig, or why don't you just wear lashes, or why don't you do your brows or something, just so we could fit in and feel normal? And I find that so obnoxious and annoying. I do get exhausted talking about alopecia. Hence, we're on a podcast. What an oxymoron. But I mean, it's like, there is this explanation fatigue that I do feel, because I just want to go outside and be great. I don't want to have to think about what I may say based on someone's ignorance or someone's curiosity. But how I deal with over-explaining is I just have to remind myself that I'm an original and I'm not a copy. And who wants to be basic anyways? And at the end of the day, as bald women, we are going to stand out, because we don't see this very often. And I think for me, I'd rather just be myself than try to be someone or something that I'm not. And I recently decided to stop wearing wigs and headscarves to work. And I don't know if I shared this with you guys. Yeah, it was a couple weeks ago. I was just like, I just woke up in the morning, didn't give it a second thought, got dressed, ate my breakfast, did my makeup, and I was out the door. And as I was driving to work, I was listening to my music and I felt great. I went to work, sat at my desk, and guess what, guys? Nothing changed. People still treated me like Crystal. I had some people say, oh, wow. I had other people hug me. I had some of my colleagues cry. I had someone say, well, good morning, gorgeous. And I didn't have to explain myself. I just was. And that was the beauty of it, because I walked in there not making a big deal out of it. And I think that ties in with this whole notion of having to over-explain yourself, because I feel like if you don't make a big deal out of it, others aren't. And they're not going to want to ask you questions, or they'll feel less inclined to ask you questions because you're not making a big deal about your alopecia. You're not walking into a room saying, hey, look at me, I'm bald. Hey, look at me, I have thinning hair. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like for me, it's just one of those things where I'm just so proud of where I am in my hair loss journey, no matter how big or small that is, that's my superpower. And that's like my ammunition. So I don't feel like I have to over explain anymore. I control the narrative. And if I don't want to talk about it, I'm not answering your question. And you have to be okay with that. I don't know. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah. No, that's so precious. And I'm very happy for you that you were able to go out to work and just be authentically you and just express yourself in any way that you want to. And everyone was so supportive. And I really do feel like it's about your energy too, right? The more comfortable you are with your alopecia, the more comfortable others will be too. And I think it sounds like you rocked it that day. I'm so proud of you. That's amazing. Thanks,
girl. I will say that. Thank you. I will say, though, sometimes you just got to fake it till you make it. Even if you're not feeling comfortable and confident, just fake it till you make it. They're not going to know the difference anyways, right? But in that same token, I will say that you have to also be able to handle criticism without taking it personal, because not everybody's going to think bald is beautiful. I mean, look how we're portrayed in the media, right? So you have to be able to understand and be aware that not everybody's going to accept this as beautiful and empowering and strong. And, we just have to take it for what it is. People are going to reject us sometimes. And I don't feel like rejection is the end of the world, especially looping back to where we're talking about even finding love and dating and that sort of thing. I know I'm kind of all over the place, but I'm going to bring it home. Yeah,
go there.
I feel like when it comes to like love and dating and just interacting with people in general, not everybody's going to like us. And it may not have anything to do with your alopecia. You know what I mean? It just may be the fact that you've because you walk around with such confidence that maybe they don't like that because they haven't dealt with something within themselves, So for me, I would take rejection as a fuel of motivation. It gives me perspective. It gives me strength and motivation to just keep going and keep plowing into that notion of self-love and what is my purpose. It also makes me realize, I've got more work to do. Maybe there's some things that I need to dig deeper about. And I feel like it just opens the door for an opportunity and for a chance for me to be better, and also to give and teach myself patience, because there are going to be some people that try your patience. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. That's kind of how I deal with this whole notion of over-explaining, and I hope that made sense.
It did. There are a lot of gems in there. And I like how you take like anything that someone else says, you realize it's not always personal or always about you. It could be something inside themselves, but you still turn it around and look at yourself in a new way and think, is there something that I want to be improving on? Or you kind of use that as a way to grow in yourself. So I think that's very beautiful, and it shows a lot of maturity as well. Ooh, Crystal, when you said like, when people say, why don't you just wear a wig? Wouldn't that be easier? Oh my God. There are so many.
Get the soapbox ready.
Right?
Yeah. There is, it can be so hard not to just dive into the many reasons why saying something like that is so wrong. But sometimes it's just best to keep it simple and straight to the point. I think there are ways to get your message across without it turning into like a huge TED Talk, Like we've talked about in previous episodes, and even on this one, you want to be mindful of your energy too, right? You don't want to have to explain your alopecia all the time, because that can be really draining, and you want to make sure you're respecting your energy levels that day, whatever they're at. So if you keep it simple, you could say something like, maybe it would help me receive less comments or stares, but that doesn't mean it would make it any easier. Wearing a wig comes with its own set of challenges too. But more importantly, wearing a wig doesn't align with who I am, so it's not something that I would find easy. Bam, done. That's it. That's all you need to say. That's it.
Bam. I love it.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Love it. Let's put that on a t-shirt.
You can really like tackle it however you want. You could I mean, if you wanted to, you can get into the parts about the question implying that onus is on you for other people's actions or sentiments about alopecia when it most definitely is not. Or, you can say how wearing a wig may be only a limited solution if you're actively working to accept yourself without a wig. Whatever it is, whatever is true to you, you can just have a sentence or two prepared for such a situation and stick to it. If you feel like explaining more, I mean, that's power to you, that's power to this community, and I'm all for it, but otherwise you can just end it there. If the person has more questions or comments after that, at that point, you can just say, I'm going to end this conversation here because I'm feeling uncomfortable and I should not have to justify my actions. And you can even give them a link to KNF website or a blog post or even this podcast if they still want to learn more. We're here for you. We can speak if you're not having the energy to that day. Just send them a link to our podcast and they can learn a ton, or the KNF website or any other resources that you find helpful. So yeah, I think it's all about maintaining your energy and really just realizing you don't have to explain yourself if you don't want to. If you do, just have a couple sentences prepared, whatever feels true to you.
Yeah, I agree. And for our listeners out there who choose to wear a wig, a headscarf, a hat, whatever it is, that's what works for you. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? And if that's how you choose to rock or cope with your alopecia, then that's on you and that's your power and that's what makes you comfortable, because it's so important to drill it home that there's no right or wrong way when it comes to alopecia. Like, we're all still trying to figure this out. Like, I'm over 20 years in and I'm still learning something every day, right? So I feel like in this space, you have to do what feels right, like Sarah was saying. Like, there's no right or wrong way how to show up. And I feel like we can't let other people's opinions and thoughts dictate how we show up in this space. That's really important. So if you want to rock the wig, sis, rock the wig. If you don't want to, don't. But do not let the opinions of other people's dictate your mood or mess up your day, period.
Exactly. Mic drop.
Right?
That makes so much sense. And I guess what I'm hearing too is we may not be able to control how others approach us and what opinions they share, or even what challenges kind of fall into our laps, but we can control how we relate to our experience. And I guess that's a day-by-day process. So I think to wrap it up, I feel like a quote that really speaks to our conversation today is by Kyra James, and she says, "Be confident in who you are and proud of who you are becoming." So
beautiful.
That's
take
wonderful.
that home,
I love that.
let it sink in, and thanks for joining us today. It's been such a great conversation, and we hope that there are some pieces of wisdom that you can take from this episode, or a laugh, or the feeling that you're not alone.
Lauren, that was such a beautiful quote. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Yes, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for listening to Alopecia's Audacity, proudly hosted by KNF. If you enjoyed this episode or learned something new, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you may listen. Keep up with us and follow our Instagram and Facebook at Alopecia's Audacity. You can also subscribe to our YouTube at Alopecia's Audacity. We welcome your questions and comments, which can be sent to alopeciasaudacity@canf.org, and you can sign up for our mailing list at www.canf.org. Stay tuned.